together. And Deuteronomy 23:1, he that is wounded in the stones. Moving on, we should note that the God of the Bible also has an inordinate interest in dung, or human feces, not unlike that which you would expect from someone who is perverse or mentally ill. This fetish is evident in Ezekiel 4:12. And thou shalt bake it with dung, with dung that comes out of man in their sight. Ezekiel 4:15. I have given thee cow's dung for man's dung, and thou shalt prepare thy food therewith. Yuck. And 1 Kings 14:10. I will bring evil upon the house of Jeroboam, and will cut off from Jeroboam him that pisses against the wall, and I will take away the remnant of the house of Jeroboam, as a man takes away dung, till it be all gone. God's preoccupation with dung reaches a climax in Malachi 2:3, at the very end of the Old Testament, which says, quote, Behold, I, this is God speaking, will corrupt your seed, and spread dung upon your faces, even the dung of your solemn feasts. Unquote. Do you know of anyone who has ever spread dung on people's faces? Doesn't that make you want to cringe? Just picture in your mind an almighty perfect being spreading dung on the faces of people. God is not only portrayed in the Bible as a being overly concerned with breasts, urine, testicles, and human feces, but a pervert exposing the sexual organs of a woman. That's shown by reading Isaiah 3:17. The Lord will smite with the scab the crown of the head of the daughters of Zion, and the Lord will discover their secret parts. And Nahum 3:5. I am against thee, saith the Lord of hosts, and I will discover thy skirts upon thy face, and I will show the nakedness, I will show the nations thy nakedness, and thy kingdoms thy shame. Moving on to additional filthy language, we come to one of the most disgusting passages, Ezekiel 23:19-21, which says, She increased her harlotry and doted upon her paramours, lovers, whose members were like those of asses, and whose issue was like those of horses. Thus you long for the lewdness of your youth, when the Egyptians handled your bosom and pressed your young breasts. Unquote. Any reasonably informed individual doesn't need a translation of words like harlot, paramours, members, issue, bosom, and breasts. The general tenor of that which is being said is all too clear, and explanations are neither necessary or proper. Many Christians are never told that several verses refer to a disgusting ritual in which people put their hand on the male organ while swearing an oath. 3 verses falling into this category are Genesis 24:2, which says, Abraham said to the oldest servant of his house that ruled over all he had, Put, I pray thee, thy hand under my thigh. Genesis 47:29 says, He called his son Joseph and said to him, If I have not found grace in thy sight, put, I pray thee, thy hand under my thigh, and I will deal kindly and truly with thee. And Genesis 24:9, which says, The servant put his hand under the thigh of Abraham his master, and swore to him concerning that matter. Nearly every religion has used a phallus, that's an object that represents the male organ, as a symbol of something or other, and the Judeo-Christian tradition is no different. Zipporah, the wife of Moses, appeared to have looked upon the male's organ as part of a religious ritual, when in Exodus 4:25 she, quote, took a sharp stone and cut off the foreskin of her son and cast it at his, that is her husband's, feet, and said, surely a bloody husband art thou to me, unquote. Circumcision has been a religious ritual in Judaism for centuries. We'll conclude our orgy of biblical profanities, obscenities, immoralities, and perversities by citing a list of revolting biblical activities mentioned by Harry Barnes, an author, on pages 174 and 175 of his book entitled Twilight of Christianity. He notes that daughters have sexual intercourse with their father in Genesis 19:30-38. Amnon rapes his sister in 2 Samuel 13:12-14. Absalom violates his father's concubines in 2 Samuel 16:22. Rachel rents her husband to Leah in Genesis 30:15-16. Abraham fornicates with a maidservant in Genesis 16:3. Judah lies with his daughter-in-law in Genesis 38:14-18. A woman is abused all night in Judges 19:25. Reuben commits incest in Genesis 35:22. Onan spills his seed on the ground during intercourse in Genesis 38:8-10. Abraham lends his wife to the Pharaoh in Genesis 12:15-19. Two sisters lose their virginity in Ezekiel 23:3-21. And Potiphar's wife attempts to seduce Joseph in Genesis 39:7. Now, can you imagine people sending their children to Sunday school to read a book from which this garbage has not been expunged? If a lot of censorship is not used, somebody's guilty of child abuse and should be prosecuted. Even when the Bible does not advocate or condone the atrocious behavior it's speaking about, the book is still to be condemned for even mentioning such activities in an unnecessary and repulsive manner. In many instances, no real purpose was accomplished by relating disgusting events or by using a language that is atrocious and revolting. Some events are all but impossible, and there's no need to have even referred to them other than to satisfy the author's sick interest in the sexually bizarre. Deuteronomy 25:11-12, for instance, says, when men strive together with one another, and the wife of one draws near to deliver her husband out of the hand of him who smites him, and puts her hand, and takes him by the secrets, then thou shalt cut off her hand, unquote. Has anyone ever seen or heard of an instance in which two men are fighting, and the wife of one interferes by reaching in and grabbing the organ or testicles of her husband? Now let's be sensible. Relating an account of that nature says more about the sick interest of the biblical author than any moral law being outlined. That can also be said of the events in 2 Samuel 16:22, which says, Absalom went in unto his father's concubines in the sight of all Israel, unquote. I know of no ruler in history, no matter how degenerate, who had intercourse with concubines in full view of his entire